The White House is now waiving this Jones Act, finally, in an effort to speed up this delivery to Puerto Rico.
It is. Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders made the announcement this morning on her Twitter page, writing, quote, "At Ricardo Rosello's request, POTUS has authorized the Jones Act be waived for Puerto Rico. It will go into effect immediately."
The Jones Act, which was signed into law after World War II, was passed to protect the U.S. from foreign competition. Now, the law requires shipments between the U.S. to be carried out exclusively by vessels built and operated by Americans. Well, the president suspended the act after both Hurricanes Irma and Harvey, and that was done fairly quickly. Over the last week or so, lawmakers have criticized the government's slow response in getting aid to the island, including this delay in waiving the act. For more on this, we want to bring in Walter Olson, who is in Washington. He's a senior fellow at the Cato Institute Center for Constitutional Studies. Walter, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Provide us some context of the Jones Act. What is its purpose, and why is it considered a hindrance during disaster relief operations?
It was originally intended to preserve a U.S. merchant marine industry. It has become a much smaller industry than it once was, and probably less important in wartime emergencies. And the Jones Act has resulted in a very specialized remaining industry, heavily composed of shipping between the U.S. mainland and islands like Puerto Rico and Hawaii. That means that the costs of the Jones Act are heavily borne by people on those islands rather than by Americans generally.
So Florida and Texas received waivers pretty much immediately after Irma and Harvey, and the White House waited over a week to issue a waiver because they said it wasn't really needed, that supplies were arriving to the island, and we saw the coverage. A huge part of the problem was not getting the supplies to the island, but the ports were damaged by the hurricane. Do you agree with their decision to wait?
I definitely agree with their decision to waive, and I'm glad it wasn't delayed any longer, because obviously in the first days you've got the problems of reopening the ports in the first place, but after that happens you've got a lot of relief supplies waiting to come in, a lot of them conveniently carried by ships that may not be U.S. flagged, and you don't want to have to depend on someone's lawyer telling them that they can't bring in supplies.
So, you know, what I had actually asked you is whether or not you agreed with their decision to wait a week.
Oh, to wait.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I wish they had waived it earlier. I'm glad it's happened now, though.
Right.
Walter, I'm curious. The president, in some comments that he made over the course of this week, said that there are some people, he said, that are not supportive of waiving this. Who are those people, do you think?
Well, the shipping industry that concentrates on that niche makes a lot of money from the lack of competition, and they jealously defend the Jones Act against incursions. A few years ago, there was a question of whether, after the BP Gulf oil spill, an expert team from the Netherlands could use a ship from that country to help clean up, and the then administration said no. It's too important to protect American shippers, even in that emergency. So this has a lot of political forces guarding it.
So you're basically saying that the shipping industry, even in a situation where American lives are at risk, would prefer to protect their business interests as opposed to allowing an island that is a U.S. territory to get crucial supplies, food, water?
I think that was not taking the general interest into account, and I hope that they see exactly the point that you're making. I hope that they see that, especially in an emergency, but also even after the emergency is over, there is no reason to make the people of Puerto Rico pay for this outdated arrangement.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. You've written a lot about the Jones Act. I think most people hadn't really heard of it before this Hurricane Maria, but it occurred to me that it was having a negative impact on Puerto Rico. And particularly, here we have a country, an island that's in dire straits financially, that's on the verge of bankruptcy. You would think the conversation about lifting the Jones Act would have already happened because of that.
Very good point, indeed. And studies have found that the added shipping cost, it can be double to ship building supplies, for example, to San Juan from a U.S. port compared with shipping them to the Dominican Republic or to Kingston, Jamaica. This causes Puerto Ricans to pay more. It also causes businesses to stay out of Puerto Rico because the cost structure is so high that they can't make a buck. So there's every reason to think that even after the hurricane is cleaned up, this keeps Puerto Rico unnecessarily poor. It really should be changed.
I want to ask you, Walter, Senator John McCain has long been an advocate for completely repealing the Jones Act. And I think even in the wake of the hurricane that devastated the United States and over in Puerto Rico, he's also come out again reiterating that he would like to see that repealed. What do you think of that?
I think Senator McCain is completely right. And we've talked about the impact on the Caribbean. Certainly in Hawaii, one of the reasons why they pay more, and it has weird effects on people on the U.S. mainland, too. For example, it would make sense to ship propane gas from Texas to New England, where it gets very cold in the winter. But you got to do that on Jones Act ships or not at all. So it winds up increasing costs for odd things, road salt in the Northeast during the winter. And we would have a more efficient economy. They should look at whether there's a different way of preserving a good merchant marine emergency supply. But this is not a good way to do that.
Walter Olson, thank you as always, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.